Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier. Although the Munich beer hall putsch was significant in ways, I think I said in my presentation on the putsch, or at least I hinted, that the real significance was Hitler's trial. And that's what this presentation will focus on. But just as with the other consequences of the occupation of the Ruhr, the humiliation and the hyperinflation, we first have to consider why is something that happened in 1923 so important in 1933, 10 years later? Well, Hitler might well have been the only one to see it at the time, but the trial gave Hitler a platform that he was sure would at some point in the future, he didn't know when exactly, help his bid for power. So what was that platform? Well, for a start, in 1923, the Nazis were a small, insignificant party. Have you heard of the Economic Party, a middle-class party, or the German Völkisch Freedom Party, Ludendorff's party, or the German Socialist Party, very right-wing and led by the extreme anti-Semite Julius Streicher, who later joined the Nazi Party? My point is, you probably haven't. And the Nazis might have gone the same way as them, into oblivion. The dustbin of history, as Trotsky once famously said. Forgotten forever, except by historians, of course. It was the trial that gave Hitler and the Nazis national recognition. Hitler knew it was an opportunity to present himself to the nation, present himself as a national hero. The trial, which was to last 24 days, attracted press from across Germany and beyond. Hitler had the platform he had wanted for so long, a platform to present his own views and those of his party, and to show the weakness of those in power. And boy, Hitler seized his opportunity. His opening statement lasted 4 hours. Think of that the next time you're sitting in a school assembly. He was allowed to interrupt as often as he pleased and cross-examine witnesses. He readily admitted his intent to overthrow the state, but declared, "There is no such thing as high treason against the traitors of 1918. His closing speech was both dramatic and memorable. "You may pronounce us guilty 1,000 times over, but the goddess of the eternal court of history will smile and tear to tatters the brief of the state prosecutor and the sentence of this court, for she acquits us." The important thing, though, was that because of the trial, Hitler was seen as a figure of some importance, the leader of the nationalist right. In fact, later Hitler himself would regard the failure of the putsch as a piece of luck, because the Nazis simply weren't ready for power at that time, and they would have quickly failed. But Hitler had most certainly announced himself. His time in prison gave him the space to think things through more carefully, which would lead to a change of course, a parliamentary path to power as opposed to inciting insurrection. While in prison, Hitler told a party loyalist, "Instead of working to achieve power by armed coup, we shall have to hold our noses and enter the Reichstag against the Catholic and Marxist deputies. If outvoting them takes longer than outshooting them, at least the result will be guaranteed by their own constitution. Sooner or later, we shall have a majority, and after that, Germany." You know the quote, so make use of it. You won't remember it all, but you can still refer to it. Call it the hold our noses quote. But it's a really important decision Hitler made. We can't say for certain, but it's doubtful if a later insurrection would have worked. It would have frightened the middle classes, and more importantly the traditional elite and the army. They would have squashed it. The parliamentary route left the middle classes voting for the Nazis, and the elite thinking they could tame them and make use of Hitler. The trial also showed Hitler once and for all that there was at least some in the traditional elite who supported him, or at least agreed with his criticisms of liberal socialist Weimar. The Bavarian authorities had seen to it that the trial would take place in Munich, and the Bavarian Minister of Justice had appointed the judge, who was a nationalist, sympathetic to the Nazi cause, and who had presided over a previous trial of Hitler's. The sentences were light, very light. The court thought they had acted patriotically, and so should be treated leniently. And he would continue to court this elite right up to the point that they helped him into power, persuading Hindenburg to give him the chancellorship. The trial turned Hitler into a hero, the would-be saviour of the nation. In prison he wrote Mein Kampf, or My Struggle, to really get this message across to the German people. Although the book was not widely read, it became widely known and talked about. It was part autobiography, but he also set out his criticisms of the November criminals and the Weimar Republic, as well as his own vision of Germany's future. So, the tactical failure of the putsch, indeed the humiliation of the putsch, was turned into a propaganda triumph. Hitler would still have to wait. Weimar recovered, and if it hadn't been for the Great Depression, which reminded Germans of all Weimar Germany's failings, Hitler and the Nazis might still have found themselves in that dustbin of history. But with that change of circumstance, Hitler, who had made sure that the Nazi Party was ready to seize its chance, the trial had made him known, Nazi propaganda had turned the putsch from a humiliating failure to a heroic stance. My struggle is your struggle, and my struggle is on behalf of your struggle. That's what he had been saying, and the Nazis were organised like no other party had even dreamed of being. So, there you have it, a useful analysis of the significance of Hitler's trial. You know this is the kind of stuff we could talk about in tutorials, and I could show you how to make use of it in potential questions. If you're interested, get in touch with me, or get your parents to do so at historymadeeasier@gmail.com. And don't worry about the cost. I'll sort that out with your parents. I'm here to help and not get rich, just as well really. But it will depend on whether there is a slot available. I don't do many tutorials. But anyway, let me thank you for listening and wish you luck with your studies. Cheers.